All right, man. We are good to go. Subtractem. You, I think, are one of the Path of Exile 2 veterans at this point. You have basically played almost every iteration of public Path of Exile 2 versions. Am I right?
I believe so.
ExileCon
Yeah.
to all the LA
Yep.
events?
I have been. First played at ExileCon a year and a half ago or so, and I have been to every single LA event. And even when I didn't feel like flying again, they did the one before this. They did two almost like a month apart from each other, and I was like, how much could have really changed? Oh, all right, I'll just get on the plane again. But I'm glad I've done it. Yeah, it's been really interesting seeing the progression. Oh, and the huge contrast. We
Yeah.
could talk for a long time about how much has changed. And
Okay.
yeah,
I would
GGG is a
love to
special
know
company.
the
Yeah.
difference between ExileCon 2023 for a lot of new people who haven't been paying attention to Path of Exile 2 until this week. The difference between 2023 ExileCon and essentially now, the version you played 2.5, 3 weeks ago.
It's not even the same game. Like it's like the contrast is, we could talk forever about it. The short of it is, at ExileCon, I was worried, and I did not know. I was like, they've been working on this for this many years, and I have a history in game development, and I know how long it takes to do things in general and all that, and like where things look like in the refined process. And you know, they had the art and the sound, they had that nailed early. Like the way it looks right now, they've tweaked some things. The ambiance is getting there, more music tracks and all that. Camille is just popping off, of course. But the balance was so it if you've ever booted up Solo Self-Found Hardcore Ruthless, it felt like that, but maybe even worse. It was just brutal and intense, and like they just said like, oh, a bunch of streamers are coming to ExileCon. Let's see what we can throw them at. And most people couldn't beat, like they had it set up so you could play like 4 different characters, I think, and it was like a preset zone with preset gear and everything. And it was like, here, your character is an Axe 6 with like 2 white items and 2 blue items. Good luck. And it was brutal. Up until and then it was actually almost a downgrade when they first added WASD, which a couple playtests later, they added WASD, but they still, you guys are so lucky. Your wrists are so lucky you did not try to play Path of Exile 2 with WASD and 5 flasks. That is one of the most miserable. If you ever played old school Valdo's, or old school Valdo's Rest, where you would drop a Nemesis, where you would just drop hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of chaos every single map. It was like that RSI. Like imagine controlling with WASD and pressing 5 flasks every 5 seconds. So you're like trying to walk around. You're like, oh, I gotta press my life flask, and like and like each flask was, there's an anti-bleed flask, an anti-freeze flask, and an anti-chill flask. Not just freeze and chill, a freeze flask, a chill flask, a bleed flask, a poison flask. You had to do all of them. And it's just like, oh, this monster looks like he might do chaos damage. Press my poison flask. It was, yeah, we're talking, you're playing old school Flash and Brood War. Just like, you watch those Koreans just like popping off at high APM. You had to play like that. And it's been truly impressive to see how quickly GGG has responded to the feat. Like they straight up, like, it's crazy. Like just talking with Jonathan, like he would be walking around and you would see these small groups of people that were playing, and they would just like start talking to him, and people would gather around and be like, oh yeah, what about this? And he'd be like, well, I'm not sure, we don't want to do that. And then two play tests later, they would have implemented it. And it's really, really impressive how they truly took feedback. And I think that momentum is a thing that we should go into EA with, and that mindset going into early access. And like, just know that it's not going to be, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be good. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be real fun, but there will be a lot of flaws. There's a reason why the league is voided. And just like, realize it's early access, actually give your feedback. Don't just go to Reddit and like, oh, I thought my mirror dropped, and then it's going to feel bad when your mirror drops and it's stuck behind a chest and you can't pick it up. It's going to feel bad. But they will fix those bugs, and just go into it knowing that there will be bugs. Anyway, yeah, it's wild how much has changed.
No, it's lovely hearing that, and I think you expressed it very well with the flasks especially. That's something that we received pushback on both times I went. I kind of complained about it. I did say, oh, wow, on controller, when you're only pressing 2 buttons, that feels a lot better. And within those few months, they changed it to just be 1, 2, and then the charm system. Did that feel good for the 7-8 hours you played it?
Yeah, the charms
Yeah.
are so cool. Like,
are they? Because we've only seen a
It's-
few options.
we've
Do you
only
have
seen a
any other
few.
examples top of mind of how they can be used?
I mean, I would put charms in the category of, at the very least, unique jewels or something. I
Oh,
think we're going to find transformative, unique charms. They're going to do really interesting things like, hey, instead of just 25% less chance to get ignited, there might be 25% chance to reflect and ignite or something. Like, I think they're going to do really, really cool things with charms. And just having more gear slots that enable them to flex that creativity is going to be, you give GGG systems and they're going to give you a skill tree for it. And there's going to be some
yeah.
really cool stuff.
Yeah. And you mentioned something that's very important for many of us going into EA, and it's the fact that it's going to be awesome, like you said, Hype Lord right here, Glaze Lord right here, but it's going to be so buggy, especially the end game. Because as we heard, they've really only put the full force of the company behind it since July. That's like 6 months compared to the campaign, which they've really been ironing out since 2019. That's 5 years of teamwork on this. A lot of it is new asset creation, right? A lot of it is just making new skills and classes and then polishing all the mechanics. But the end game, that's going to be a whole new playground with hundreds of thousands of people testing it out. First impressions of it in LA, I know you guys saw it out there. I heard there was a little group of Path of Exile players that were super excited when you first saw it. Has that just been evolving ever since you've seen more and more of it this past week of information dumps?
I'm doing a weird thing this
Ooh.
week, these couple weeks. I mean, the weird thing is that I'm trying to be a normie, to the detriment of being, I don't know, successful streamer or whatever. I am so excited for this game that I don't want to ruin it by just being a little degen content creator that's milking everything. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no hate to people that are doing. I am jealous of the people that can do that. But for me, it would sacrifice. Like, I want, as just a gamer, I want to enjoy this game to the most, how I can enjoy it the most. Because I would be really hurting myself from probably, one of the most notable game releases in my life. And I don't want to detract from that by sitting there combing over, so maybe people get more fun out of that, but for me,
Mm-hmm.
it would take away from the fun of discovery, of actually just playing the game for the first time, and that's what I want to experience. To the detriment of having, milking content and all that. Like, I've never enjoyed doing that.
Yeah.
That's just not something that, like, I've tried a little bit, like, oh, daily upload, and oh,
Yeah.
GG posted a patch today, and these little things, and like, people that do put out that stuff perform a service to the community, but that's just not something that I've enjoyed. Like, the stuff that works best for me has always been longer form, deeper type of content, and that's what I enjoy, to like, what makes me happy that I've made. So that's really the big shift that I'm going toward, just going back to my roots again, with PoE2. So yeah, in terms
That's
of like,
awesome.
if you want to ask me about specifically what I think about this keystone or anything, like, I'm actually just avoiding it. Avoiding that news. If anything, like, I've already, I've played like 15 plus hours of PoE2 already.
Right.
Granted, I've played Act 1 and 2 over and over again.
Over and over.
But I really don't want to spoil a game for myself. And that's, for me, I'm just, being selfish almost, and just doing my own thing now.
That's super respectable, man. And it's funny because I have been the milker for the past year and a half on Path of Exile 2 stuff.
Yeah,
And now that we're like
you're
a
milking
week and a half
everybody.
away, I'm like doing the same thing. Like, Havoc releases all the support gems, and I'm like, do I really want to see them? Nah, I'm just not going to look. Dreamcore has the entire passive skill tree mapped, and I'm like, I'll watch one video. I'm not watching anything else. We're like 6 days away. Open World Gaming posted the entire presentation that you guys saw. I think it showcases a really cool boss, 100-0, for the first time ever. It wasn't in the presentation. And I'm like, I'm just going to be stoic, and I'm not going to watch, and I'm just going to wait until early access starts, because we're that close, man. I want to preserve as much of the magic as possible, especially going to endgame, and that's why it's like the whole data mining thing that's going on right now that might happen. These early access reviews coming out with all this information. I'm going to try to avoid as much of them as possible and just take what Grinding Gear Games is giving us, because I don't think they want to necessarily spoil the whole game either, right? You've talked to Jonathan. You know that he wants that golden age, that era of us discovering the game to last as long as possible, yeah?
I think we're going to have a very clear delineation in eras of PoE2, basically pre and post POB coming out for PoE2. And I want the pre POB era to be as long as possible, because I think that's really where a lot of the magic comes from. I was talking about this, just a couple hours ago on stream about, when games first come out, like some of the most fun, I would just say straight up, the most fun that you will have with a game is the first couple weeks of a new game when everyone is excited about it. Think about the first time you booted up PUBG or Fortnite or Apex Legends or any of those games that, like when the Battle Royales first came out, and how transformative and special that, like, oh, hey, we're going to hot drop the school. Maybe we get in a buggy, and the game was so buggy. Like, hey, the car would randomly just flip over and do like a 720 and launch into the space, and all your friends are laughing and everything. And then 6 months later, you got that one friend, and it's always me, who's sitting there sweaty, like, all right, clear comms. All right, everyone, we're going to be dropping to the 2 buildings west of school. Make sure that everyone has an AR and at least level 2 armor, and then we're going to push school. We'll make sure we get that, and then we're going to rotate to the left side of the circle, make sure that we get in position, and you instantly get sweaty, right? And then you get sweaty about whatever game you're playing, and this is what's gonna happen with PoB. It's just natural, right? Like it's the instinct as these like spreadsheet nerds that we all are, to go that direction. And I want to, as someone that's just now jaded, being around for decades and decades at this point, I want to preserve that magical early time as long as possible, and I don't want to ruin that for myself either.
High level view. What part of the game that's been revealed so far really makes you feel that most? Just like, ooh, I'm so excited to toy with that. I'm glad I don't know going in. Is it endgame or ascendancies?
For me, notable characters and bosses it gives me that spark of joy. So I mean, if you watched me, I showed the footage on stream. If you watch me, like, actually, I'm not gonna spoil it. I'm not gonna spoil it right now. You find and fight characters that are really, really memorable, at least even as early as like Act 2 in the campaign.
Yep.
That you're just like, what? Why am I killing this? Why am I fighting this guy right now? What the hell? This is crazy. And they teased like that giant obelisk, and you have to get 3 keys to unlock the boss and everything. Like, who knows who that is? And there's probably gonna be some cool callback. And as someone who's now played PoE1 for nearly a decade, it's gonna be so cool. And yeah, I really want to avoid. There's clearly gonna be people like Ben and Karn and all that get there really early,
way earlier.
and no matter what, I'm gonna hear about it. It's gonna be unfortunate. Like I literally will not be able to avoid it. But I do want to kind of put on some earmuffs as long as possible and just enjoy that. So like definitely the first couple days, I'm not even opening Twitter. I'm not doing nothing. I'm timing out people in my chat that that give me too many teasers. I really just want to see these characters for the first time, and it's gonna be. I'm so excited for it. And it's like that first time that you play is gonna be really, really memorable.
Definitely. And I'm asking everyone this question: who's in the maze? Who's in the labyrinth? Is it a mystery character that we already know? Is it something brand new?
I think Cirrus actually got Zana pregnant, and it's their love child. She actually went away to raise the kid away from the corruption of the Atlas, and they weren't able to avoid it. And the elder actually found the kid anyway.
That's beautiful.
That
is way different than anything I've ever heard. Bravo. I love it. That's good. It likely?
They had a fling going on. They had a thing.
That's why she left. Okay. She was like, I'm pregnant. I got to get out of here. I can't be doing this Atlas stuff with it.
And Kirak was like, I'm not raising that kid.
No. Give him to the elder. That's fine. He'll be fine. Okay. Well, that's lovely, dude. I love it. Now I know that in LA, you played the Mercenary for what, 2 minutes?
I can address the allegations. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I need to hear, because I also know that you are playing a lot of Deadlock, and that's like a shooter. So I thought that you would lean right into the Merc and love it, but it sounds like you didn't really like it.
My least favorite thing about Deadlock is how much, especially the character that I played, how much I have to reload. I hate reloading. I hate reloading guns. And the Mercenary early on has to reload a lot. I said this in my video, I totally understand. And I saw it. I played with MP later. I did group play with Empyrean later. It becomes fine. It is a thing that will get solved, but I will tell you in Act 1, the amount that you have to reload your guns feels really unfortunate. And I'm sure if I had some insane crossbow that dropped, I said, like, it's crazy how anyway,
you can go in, man.
I said, like, I got this godlike staff. I'm playing. I totally recognize that the godlike staff is coloring my entire perception here, but it felt good. I can just say it felt good. I did not get a godlike crossbow, and shooting with the Merc did not feel good. I did not like the feeling of his skills very early on. The big thing is I think there's limited piercing on his early AoE skills. So as soon as you get more than a couple monsters on the screen, the AoE just is not there. Early on, very early on, his AoE is very weak. Whereas the AoE for Sork early on is very nice. And that was as soon as you get Ice Nova, like Spark, you start with Spark and Spark, or you get Spark right away. And Spark feels fine. It's not really good, like low damage, but it's good at just piercing and hitting a bunch of enemies. Whereas his cone AoE, all that, just like, I think it was only hitting a couple enemies. I think only had like one pierce. And if you've played PoE2, you know that it's very, very easy to get overwhelmed early on. And I just didn't like that feeling of having to go extra slow. It's just, when I had the option to play something that could do AoE versus something that didn't, that's what I didn't like. And like the big thing is his every single one of his moves has its own magazine. You have to reload each magazine independently, and they do not reload while you don't have it selected. So it's like, you can have your 4 skills loaded up when you walk into a pack of monsters, but if you go through those 4 magazines and that pack of monsters isn't dead, then you're limited to 1 skill, or you go through this very long set of like, all right, I'm going to walk in a circle and reload, switch, reload, switch, reload, switch. Okay, now I can start my full damage rotation. And that set, and I know it's a thing that gets solved later, but early on, I didn't like that feel. So anyway, I'm sure Merc is fine. I'm sure he's fine later on. Early Act 1, Sork just feels better.
That's why we always see him backpedaling in all the gameplay, Sub, because he's always reloading, man.
Yeah, I did not like that cadence.
That's interesting that they'd introduce like something, especially, okay, they're introducing this resource mechanic that early on. And I know a lot of the devs are saying, yeah, new players are going to love that. You really think they're going to like a class that relies heavily on needing to stop attacking every so often when everything else is just always attacking and moving forward? That's very interesting to me, like grenades. That's the AoE solver, in my opinion. Do you know how late we get those? Is it relatively quickly, or?
You can get them relatively quickly.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, again, they have their own cooldown, right? Where it's not,
exactly,
you can't just spam grenades nonstop also.
Right. Got to build into it.
So yeah, I don't know. I didn't play long enough. Like I said, I don't have a final judgment. Just, I played them for 10 minutes. I didn't love it. And the big thing that I wanted, like I think it was also very important for me to play Sork again, because Sork is my watermark. That's the thing that I've always tried, that I was able to measure the progression and the change in the game. And Sork in ExileCon was unplayable trash. And I was so upset, because like that's my favorite thing, is playing, some sort of caster. And Sork, it was so poorly tuned. Almost all of her moves were about standing still. She had something called like Mana Rift or something, where she would put down a cloud, like a lightning cloud, and she would get bonus spell damage and mana regen or something if she like stood still in this one little spot. It was like she had all these things that were based around, imagine something like, Frost Bubble or the Sigil of Power or anything, but like she was entirely built around those type of skills, but with tiny AoE. Like your character could barely move. It's like tiny AoE, stand in this one spot and do something. And that's the way she was set up initially. Also, that was when they first showed us weapon switching, And weapon switching used to have like a full 1+ second
Yeah, that's
animation.
rough.
So like they wanted to show off like, okay, you're going to use your wand for fireballs and then you're going to switch to a staff and then cast Comet. And we're talking like a full second to like pull out your staff. And then Comet had like literally, I think, a 3-second cast time. And it was, it felt very, very bad. And then if you saw my gameplay from last week, then, just like night and day, absolute night and day. They have tuned it. They have listened to the feedback, and Sorc feels much, much better right now.
Did you find yourself naturally comboing skills together as they presume you would, or sticking to 1-2 skills through most of the combat?
I comboed. So the problem with this is kind of a game design
Go into
thing
it.
to think about. Yeah. So in terms of game design, like I just think about like the mechanics of playing is like, what is my time to kill? And every time that you press a button, you have to be very conscious of the time that your time and resources, and time is one of your resources that you're consuming to output that damage, or, that utility to set up the damage that you're doing. So for example, what they had intended was, or one of the potential combos is Ice Nova naturally casts on Frostbolt in PoE2. So you don't need a Transfigured Gem or anything. You just cast your Frostbolt, then you can cast your Ice Nova, but it doesn't like multicast or anything by default. So you can cast one Frostbolt and then maybe like one Ice Nova, as you're manually casting it. And the third thing that you can do that's really cool is frozen enemies. There's a lot of support gems and skills that synergize with frozen enemies. So you can just straight up shatter a frozen enemy. Like, this enemy is frozen, he is now dead. And so you can shatter him and it'll do a Herald of Ice explosion that does, I don't know if it's % life or what, but it does very big damage. And so you can manually explode enemies. And then there's support gems that will put a cold dot based on the overkill damage that you do. And there's all these other things that can synergize with like the frozen enemies. That's really, really cool. And so what I wanted to do was like, walk towards a pack of monsters, cast a Frostbolt, cast a couple Ice Novas, freeze them, then Cold Snap, which is the Cold Snap is reworked to just a cast on frozen enemy. It's an instant cast that will shatter an enemy. And I wanted to do that. But if you think about the time that you're investing, casting that Frostbolt as a pure utility just to be able to cast an Ice Nova in the distance, instead you could keep walking forward, like, because the Ice Nova doesn't get like a 50% more damage like it does in PoE1, or 30% more in PoE1.
Mm-hmm.
So you're better off just walking up to the monster, manually casting your Ice Nova, and then freezing them. And then if you think if Cold Snap had a cast time, you would be even better served to just cast Ice Nova again instead of casting Cold Snap. So you have to think about the time investment to set up the utility, to set up the combo, versus like, in addition, there was something like there's Flame Wall, and Flame Wall is really cool. It gives you flat fire damage to your projectiles that you're shooting through. And I was using that a lot, but was it worth me to, we have this problem in PoE1 as well, where it's like, you're going through Act 1 and Act 2. Do you take the time to position yourself so you can put the Flame Wall and then put your Holy Flame Totem down? Or is it quicker to just put the Holy Flame Totem down and then, maybe cast like one Rolling Magma and then keep walking? Like, you have to think about that, that positioning and that timing and that combo and all that. And that's already in PoE1 a little bit. PoE2, they're really trying to incentivize it. And, I think at least for the Sorc, Jonathan said that he's working on it more for the Sorc. I think it doesn't quite hit yet for like the cast time investment. Like, it's really just a numbers tweaking thing right now. But I like the idea. I really like the ideas that they're going for that with the combos. And the pressing the buttons doesn't feel that bad. Like
really?
With the WASD
Okay.
controls
That's
already.
Nice.
Yeah, with the WASD controls already, you are closer to feeling. It feels closer to playing like a twin stick shooter than PoE1 or something. So like with the twin stick shooter, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna use my assault rifle over here. I'm gonna toss a grenade over my back and jump over this cliff or whatever, and roll around here. And yeah, it feels more natural actually to just use multiple skills.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know that they were talking about how the Sorcerer was where they were seeing the most improvement necessary for combos. Like the Warrior is very obvious. You can see all the combo-based gameplay. The Monk is another one too, where everything is just so implicit in what you're doing. All the skills just naturally flow together. Whereas the Sorc just needs a little bit of work, maybe to increase the damage for the combo abilities. Because the Warrior, I mean, if you combo something like the Volcanic Fissure of Snaking or whatever it's called in Path of Exile 2 with just a big slam, massive amount of damage. You can see the boss health bar chunk down. I didn't see any of those massive combos with the sorcerer. Maybe I just haven't seen the right gameplay, but I'm sure they'll get there.
Yeah,
Another
no,
game design.
I've tried every skill.
Oh, you did?
Almost every skill
Yeah.
that I had access to at my lower level. And yeah, there was nothing, you know, you could do the regular, put it down to Orb of Storms and cast Arc and stuff like that. Yeah, nothing that's just like, you know, set up the monster besides the shattering stuff. There was
Okay.
nothing else that was really like set up the monster, you know, get charges on them or something, and then do like a big chunk of damage. It was
Okay.
all like very iterative stuff.
And you played the sorcerer in June 2 during the console event, right?
In the console, actually, the console, that's the one time I didn't play Sork. I played
Oh,
Ranger
dang it.
at that time. Yeah.
Still, I want to ask your opinions on WASD and controller. Which do you think felt better? I know they're not the same version of game that you played, but people who might be wondering, do I pick up a controller for Path of Exile 2? A lot of reviews coming out now are like, this game was built for controllers. Play it on controller. Are you subscribing to that?
Do we want to talk about that a little bit later?
I would love to talk about that a little bit.
Oh yeah, we could talk about that. Where that statement came from.
Yes.
That'd be fun to talk about. But yeah, that statement specifically, what I would say is they have come closer to parity. So it is closer now. You no longer feel like you're really missing out by playing with a controller versus keyboard and mouse now. Excuse me. With that said, however, the inventory management's still not quite there.
It isn't? Okay.
I mean, at least for me, I am not like a hardcore controller guy. Like I have my controller. I use it for games that feels natural for. Now, I think I will use it. So the difference is PoE1, I never use it except for opening stack decks. It's like the one use in PoE1, right, is opening stack decks. But in PoE2, it feels good enough that as long... The big question is how much loot are we picking up in the end game? Because if I'm picking up... Like the cool thing in PoE1 is I have my scroll wheel bound to left click and everything, and we have our auto send over stuff, and I can run a map in 55 seconds, hold down my scroll wheel and just go pop everything over to my dump tab, do another map in 55 seconds, and I'm blasting. And in PoE, and that's like with me picking up an entire inventory full of junk. In PoE2, am I picking up like 5 things, or I'm picking up 50 things? And I just don't see them. If there's 50 things in my inventory, it's just not going to be really like, all right, A down, A down, A right down. Oh, okay. No, but I didn't want to move that thing because like, what if things are like kind of slightly, I think there is an auto sort if I remember correctly. So you can sort everything into the left side of your inventory. So it's
no way.
Yeah, I think they have that on the controller. I think I could be wrong. I feel like I remember that though. Okay. So that was okay. Just in your inventory, not in your stash.
Right.
I think it was like you could just sort things onto like the left side or the right side of your inventory. So it's not too hard to like get everything in one place and move it all over. But besides that, like it's still like 50 different things that you have to press one button to move over. So if it's like that, it really depends on like what the flow is for the end game.
Very true. And speaking on builds, we can just get right out of this topic. Support gems in Path of Exile, man. I would love to pick your brain a little bit on that big game design choice of limiting every character to only using one version of each support. I don't think I've heard your take on it because you haven't been doing the milking sub. So I don't know what your thoughts are on this.
Oh, you didn't watch my video?
I don't think I did. No, your video had unknown. I saw that it had a character and I was like, I don't want to see that fight.
Okay.
So I stopped. I haven't watched, to be honest, the only video I've watched of that event is one of Dreamcore's passive tree videos. And then I've been like, I'm hands off. I have been really stoic in not consuming your guys' content right now.
All right.
So close.
Let's put your hands on something juicy. All right. So my statement is, we'll see how it plays out.
Okay.
Is that I think the limit of one of each type of support gem is one of the most clever. I would put it as at the level or nearly at the level of their currency system as one of the most clever, smart things they've ever done.
Wow.
Like to me, their currency system is one of the most brilliant game design things ever done in video games. Like the entire economy is self-correcting based on the whole crafting system, and people just trade items that are functional items that are consumable, that craft the items that people care about, right? Like that is
Yeah.
such a brilliant thing of just saying like, no, gold is stupid. Instead, it's the consumable thing. It's a fungible token. Fuck NFTs. Only fungible tokens in here. To that is what is the foundation of the economy, and it's so smart. And they can tweak little things like, hey, what if we change exalts and divines on the price of the metacrafting, and boom, upturns the entire economy, and it does the coolest things. And I think nearly on that level is the limit of one of the type of support gems. It gives them so much more flexibility, and it not just incentivizes, but forces the player to be extra intentional and thoughtful about every single choice of support gem that they do. And because of this, it allows them in the design of the support gems to do so many cool things and focus on really interesting, unique utility, because they know there's only going to be one of them in your entire build. And it allows you to do these really, really cool things. And so like when you put that support gem with that skill, it does a novel thing that is very meaningful to your build, instead of like, oh, I have these, but if you couldn't do that, like I think what it would look like is like, okay, I have Frostbolt and Ice Nova and Cold Snap and and I have inspiration support and controlled destruction and blah blah blah, and it's the same boring 4 gems on every single skill. Instead of that, now it's like, okay, well, I want like the freeze build up and maybe slower proj on my Frostbolt, and then on my Ice Nova, I actually want increased AoE and maybe this thing that makes freeze actually work better with shock or something. Like we've already seen these like cross synergy things. And then on my Cold Snap, I actually want the freezing Nova support, which is one of the coolest things, where it does the overkill vortex. Like these really, really cool specific support gems. It's so interesting. It's like really, really smart and clever. And I think it's going to play out so well. Like we're already seeing like mousing over these different support gems. Like they can do that and they can do that. Oh my God, this is so cool. And I can't wait to just like, if you watch my on stream the other day, I did I played my full playthrough. They didn't want me to upload it. They didn't want like long plays uploaded to YouTube, but they said I could play it on stream.
Yeah.
So the VOD is there if people want to see it.
Okay.
But I end up like every couple of zones moving support gems around, and I had like a couple columns in my inventory of support gems, and I would just move them around and like try this one, or I would try that one, and like, oh, maybe I want my Frostbolt to do this. And it was so like my probably my favorite thing, if not close to my favorite thing in PoE, is just fuddling with the build and just like tweaking things around and playing around with them. Like, hey, what if I want to triple cock this thing, or what if I want quadruple cock, or like maybe I'm okay with just one cock, and then maybe we just make the cock bigger, and I just like to play around, like how many cocks are we working with here, and like you can do that until you get it tweaked to the exact number, and then you're just happy. You're like, all right, I guess it's just a double cock build because that's what everyone's doing. But in PoE2, I think that tweaking phase is gonna go so much longer, and you're just the quest for the golden number of cock is just, you're never gonna end it, and you're just always gonna be searching. It's just gonna be so fun searching for that, and I'm really excited to go through that exploration phase.
I saw some awesome support gems from my little glimpses of all the data. One was like chaotic freeze support that causes your chaos or poison damage to cause freeze buildup. That sort of thing is just so
when that was someone DM'd that to me because they knew I'd like that. Yeah,
dude, that's just awesome. So your point about them, it future proofs. They can just keep pumping out cool support gems until the end of Path of Exile 2's life. It's just great because everyone's just going to be able to use it on one skill, like multiple projectiles. I saw that they rolled lesser and greater into just multiple, and there's not lesser and greater anymore. It's interesting.
Yep, they can make them more meaningful, and it's going to be cool. And I think the problem with PoE1 is the support gems are just generally damage and defense, and they don't like very few support gems in PoE1 do that many really cool things. It's like, oh, energy leech support versus controlled destruction. Like fantasy wise, they should be very, very different, but you're almost always just looking at the damage multiplier. Like, how often am I going to be doing X amount of damage with this support gem? And that's usually what you're doing, like when you're thinking about when you're grabbing those support gems. And like you go to POB and you click sort by damage, and you just look at the support gems and you click that one and that one. And you're like, oh, well, I know I can't use inspiration because I'm Eldritch Battery.
Yeah.
But besides that, I'm just going to click the top support gems. And that's so much less interesting than like, yeah, what if I want my Ice Nova to, you know, pick me up and just give me a nice pat on the head? Like I can do that. Because,
Yeah.
you know, they can, you know, you can't have like 6 skills giving you head pats, but at least one of them, it'll say, oh, you're so kawaii. And I'm like, oh, thanks.
Yeah, yeah,
Arigato.
Were you using any defensive skills when you were playing, or basically just offensive ones?
I had Arctic Armor.
You did? Okay.
As my support aura.
Yeah.
And that worked out pretty nicely. Just cut more sources of chill. I think it gave me a stack every 0.4 seconds or so. And it would just make enemies that hit me freeze themselves, which is really nicely. But I did not see any like molten shell or steel skin or anything like that, at least for Sork early on.
And did you feel like, again, I didn't watch your full playthrough. Did you feel pretty squishy on Sork, or did you feel like it was relatively defensible? As long as
I did not die that much.
You didn't?
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
You should watch me play through Act 1 if you haven't seen it yet.
I can watch that. I just don't want to go to Act 2. I can watch that one.
Yeah, watch me play through. So I got a broken staff. I got off of the Hillock guy. I got I got a +2 cold gems, 47% cold damage staff. And I literally killed all the bosses in Act 1 in fewer than 10 hits. So that was it was a different experience. But even through Act 2, there are a couple bosses that I had to adjust my playstyle. But yeah, generally freeze was just such a. I mean, I also knew to prioritize. Hey, if I have stuff that has resin life on it, I'm gonna put it on. So like I did spend a little bit of time like, hey, I'm gonna transmute some gear and try to get some life, and that I think that made a very big difference. I died very few, like I definitely died fewer than 10 times in the whole playthrough, and a lot of like most of the deaths were me just kind of disrespecting the monster.
Wow, that's
so
impressive,
yeah. I felt totally fine. Freeze is incredibly strong. The fact that you can freeze monsters and everything.
On packs too, or just bosses?
Oh yeah, full packs of monsters and everything. Like I was within like 2 Ice Novas, I could freeze a pack. So because there's a support gem that gives you 50% more freeze buildup, and then on I had a second staff that I got that had an additional 50% freeze buildup. So I could freeze everything in like 2 hits.
Wow,
it was really, really, really strong.
That sounds fun. See, I think Sorceress is slowly building up there as like the second class I want to try after Warrior. After hearing like you talk about it, I had one other person that was praising Sork, and then that teaser that ZiggyD released showcasing, I don't know if you saw it, but it showcased a really busted staff and ball lightning and the way it works.
Yeah, I saw the ball lightning is very pretty. Yeah.
Looks beautiful. It sounds great too. Oh, can't wait.
Yeah, I will say, I think the, you know, at least in the playtest just a couple weeks ago, the contrast between people that have played PoE1 and people that haven't is going to be very stark. And I'm curious, like we know like 3 playtests ago, there were people that was when it was much harder. But 3 playtests ago, a lot of people just gave up after the first couple zones and they just walked. Like there were media people. Yeah, we're talking games. We're talking the Cuphead games journalist people. Where they can't even do the Cuphead tutorial. But like they gave up after the first couple. Like these are people that traveled to get there. I mean, imagine they're LA based, but like they went in the playtest, they got slapped down and they just walked out. And even when I played a couple weeks ago, you know, Havoc was in Act 3, I think, of course. Yep. Havoc was like doing VOD reviews and everything the night before, and you know, he's just being himself. But both me and Empy got to the end of Act 2. And many of the non-PoE players, like I was looking at screens as I was walking around. I saw people like wandering around single early zones for 15, 20, 30 minutes. Like there's this one guy that he was on the couch playing on the Xbox or PlayStation at the front. And I was like halfway through Act 2. I went to the and I walked past him in the bathroom. He was in like the graveyard, which is like, I don't know, 4th, 5th zone in Act 1. He was in the graveyard. I went to the bathroom. I talked to Octavian for like 15 minutes. I got a sandwich, got a coffee, came back. He was in like the zone after the graveyard. And that's like half an hour later. Like there, and I saw a lot of people mid Act 1 after I was there for 4 or 5 hours. So, you know, there will be a very, very stark contrast in the player base between people that are experienced. And there's a lot of people that I think that are not going to know, hey, just find gear that has life on. Like the difference
Oh yeah.
between a 300 life character and a 500 life character is night and day. And yeah, I mean, we're just gonna have to educate people. That's all.
Exactly. Man, are you a little frightened with the onboarding experience given that, for example, like Path of Exile 2, I think it's right now number 2 or number 3 on Steam. It's not even out yet. There's going to be so many people who don't even know what Path of Exile is as a game, probably just buying it for 30 bucks, logging on, and then hopefully not bouncing, hopefully getting absorbed in. But given what you're saying, where, people who game for a profession are very confused. I could even say confuddled by what's going on in the game. Are you a bit worried about? I think the tutorial's great, but given like people still struggle, what is it about PoE?
PoE attracts a certain type of player.
Yeah.
And PoE2 is the sequel to PoE. It is. It is I think it is more approachable from a. It's got a little bit of tutorials. It doesn't have a lot of tutorials. It's got a little bit of tutorials.
Okay.
It's a little bit more approachable in a lot of small ways. But at the end of the day, there are so many unwritten rules about playing Path of Exile that I do think a lot of people will bounce. Like I have friends that have been waiting years. Like, oh yeah, the PoE2 is coming out, right? I'm just like, should I play PoE1? I'm like, yeah, and then they'll play it, and I've tried everything.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I've tried to encourage people to play. I've tried holding people's hands. I've tried giving them nothing. I've tried walking through the campaign with them, just answering questions, whatever. Every approach. You either like, I hate to say this, but you either like it or you don't. And it is a type of game that it knows what it is. It is unrelenting in its game design, its vision, and we'll use the V word, but it's unrelenting in its vision and what it wants to be. And that's why we respect it, and that's why we like it. And that's also what does turn some people off. And I am worried that like how many people are going to buy the early access and bounce off of it. I'm happy for GGG's bank account.
Oh yeah.
And I do think the game will be very successful and bigger than PoE1 by a lot. But I think, if you played a good amount of Path of Exile 1 and they're just like, man, this game just is not for me, it's like too much. PoE1 is PoE2 is also going to be unrelenting in the systems. And
right.
If you just don't like that complexity and you don't, if you don't want a game that treats you like Path of Exile treats you, just having a little bit more action-oriented gameplay and better graphics and sound is not gonna it's not gonna feel like a totally different game. And I think that should be me. GGG should not say that, but yeah, I think it's my responsibility, at least as someone who has played it and knows PoE1 very well, to let people know, like, if you hate PoE1, you're like, oh, I love Diablo 3, but I hate Path of Exile 1. Like, PoE2 is not the game for you. It is not. I'm sorry.
Now, given that, Sub, if you weren't a content creator, do you think you'd go back to PoE1 after playing Path of Exile 2? I keep hearing it's just an improvement. From everybody who's now played it in recent times, they're just saying it is the successor, PoE1. It has solved so many problems. We have MTX preview in PoE2. Oh my God. I can't go back to PoE1 after. I don't see myself doing it. Are you in that camp or no?
So it's really hard for me to separate my experience with PoE1, now doing it, as a job for a while,
right?
Versus what I would do in a void.
That makes sense.
With that said, I mean, if I just stopped doing this now, yeah, I mean, PoE1, I would still log in and do my 40 out of 40, I think, because I'm just
that's logging in.
if you still yeah, PoE1, I think, as Connor just said, PoE1 has to exist as a threat. The only competition for PoE2 is PoE1. I like that. But if I as soon as I got on the 40 out of 40 train, but yeah, if I weren't doing my 40 out of 40 every league, if anything, just I like a little bit of space between leagues. I actually really, before I was doing the content stuff, I really, really like only playing 1 to 2 leagues a year. And I actually think that is the healthiest, best way to play Path of Exile. I mean, granted, I guess if we have 4, 5, 6 month leagues, that's different. But when they were on the 3 month league grind, doing a fresh reset every 3 months, and the first 2 weeks, even if you're not a content creator, like you play a good amount. At least I do. And like what that did is not very good for the old job. We'll just say that. not for good for the job when you you want to grind and you just keep pushing. And I'm just PoE1 is special in my heart. I'm trying not to. I don't want to. I want to let it down kind of gentle here, but PoE1 is very special to me. It's meant a lot, but I don't know how much more that they could really do for it, where it sits outside of like developing kind of lore pushing things. I think that would be the big thing. Like big. That's what I've been wanting for a long time in PoE1 is them to push the end game. Like that's what I appreciate the most is like really interesting big end game reworks. We're like Sorceress and Elder and all of that stuff and the Conquerors and everything.
Yeah.
They haven't done that in a very long time, and that's the big meaningful thing. That's like where it feels like the the big DLC drop or whatever, and it just feels like they've been putting that off entirely for PoE2. And without that, like just a new little system, like, oh hey, here's King's March, and you can just get a little bit of extra loot, but you're still just grinding the same old maps. For me, I've done that enough hours now. I still love my 40 out of 40. Get that in like 2 to 3 weeks. I'm happy. It's fun, fresh economy. But after that, like playing much longer, even as a content creator, I probably won't be playing past my 40 out of 40. And PoE2 is planning to be my primary game now.
Yeah, unless they make big swings, I think that'll be a lot of us. I might not go 40 out of 40, but I'll try to hop in, get a few challenges here and there. But given what I've seen, and of course we still have to play it, it could just be fooling all of us. But given what I've seen, I think I'd probably switch too. Now, Sub, I didn't realize until talking with you today, you're kind of into the lore and dialogue. Are you going to be reading all the dialogue your first run through of PoE2?
Oh hell no, I'm a spacebar spammer.
Oh, what? You're making it sound like you like the story and world.
Kitten cat noodle videos every single day. Give me those kitten cat noodle videos. Okay. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. So like when it's like a memorable thing, I will listen to it. When it's like, I'm not even gonna say no spoilers. Not gonna say names for what I've seen. No spoilers. But for certain conversations, when I see a memorable character, I'm definitely gonna listen to them talk and like feel it and everything. But for like, hey, here's a random side boss guy, and he's like, oh, me and my chickens are gonna knock you down a peg. I'm Bucko. It's like, oh, did you know about the chicken god? He's not really a god. He went a little crazy, but he's got a bunch of chickens on his back and they kind of attack you. And like, that's a, deep lore cut. And it's like, I'm not going to sit here and listen to his entire voice line, but it's, but when it's Zana and Sirius's love child, well, hey, I'm going to listen to everything he has to say.
Every single time. We'll take that 1 minute cinematic for the pinnacle fight. Every single time. That cinematic, by the way, dude. I know we're getting close to the hour mark. Cinematic. I mean, yay, nay.
Oh, it's so, yeah. I mean, it's so good. It's so good. I will say I am a little I'm lucky that I was at the playtest and they put it on the big screen. So like it came out of nowhere, like, hey, we want to show you something. And they put it on the big screen with the full like concert speakers going and everything. And yeah, that was super, super exciting. It was awesome.
Magical moment, man. Now, one question I've been asking a lot of people to close out these chats is if you could put on the game director hat and add one feature to PoE2 that you think is missing, what would it be? And man, Sub, you're a game designer. Well, I think you can cook up something pretty good here on this spot.
I mean, this is the thing I've already thought of is one of the biggest things that they've made as a change thus far, at least what I've seen, is they don't want us to be movement skill spammers anymore. I have not seen a blink. I have not seen a flame dash. I have not seen anything like that. There are some movement skill, like leap slam and shield charge are very different now. They're primary attacks basically. And we have a dodge roll, and I know there's a unique where you can blink around. The thing to me that I love the most is high mobility characters. Like I played Tracer in Overwatch. I like characters that just have blink around and can do it. It doesn't have to be specifically like a movement skill spammer type of thing, But with the game, and this is what I'm hoping for with the Chronomancer, we don't know. But what I love the most, like you give me that OG World of Warcraft mage, and they actually simplified mage in WoW much later in terms of their utility that they had. But I love the access. Like if I play a caster, my favorite thing is access to like time and space manipulation and arcane related things. And I want some sort of way, or like I play Invoker for reference in Dota.
Of
I
course.
want the ability for my mechanical skill expression as a caster to give me like absolute control over time and space in some way. And that's what I want by far the most. Of I don't, give me slow fall and like an arcane bubble and some sort of like blink teleport Omaewa Shindaru thing, and I don't know, some way to just manipulate that time and space in a really, really cool way. One of my biggest disappointments will be, and I don't think this is going to be like fait accompli, like absolutely what's going to happen, but it may be like the early gameplay, is I don't want to just be holding W, holding left click and just casting a spell and walking forward. Or even like walking forward, casting a spell, comboing that second spell, walking forward, casting a spell, comboing second spell, with the emphasis on more. And we've seen this with like Monk and Warrior already look like they have some pretty cool things with like, I shield charge in, I slam them, and then I, maybe I can do like an earthquake and like knock down pillars and do really cool shit like that. And like on the converse side, for Sork, I really want, and this is what I'm hoping for with Chronomancer, is some like, I am the master of the arcane arts. This is just my power fantasy in these type of games. I want to be the master of the arcane arts. Give me that Magicka feel for people who have played that game. If I have the ability to do that mechanical skill expression, give me the ability to do that. And I really, really hope for something like that in PoE2, because they have the tools there with the emphasis on the action gameplay. We've seen this with the Monk and the Warrior. So I just don't want to stand still casting slow spells. I find that so boring.
Totally get that. And man, I didn't know you were an Invoker player. Respect.
Oh, hell yeah.
Awesome.
Hell yeah. Hit him with the WWWD, WEERDF.
All of them memorized.
Practice all those combos.
Were you Dota 2, Dota 1? Both?
I actually started in Dota 1. I started. I started in Dota, not All Stars. I started when it was a co-op PvE game where you stood in the middle and you defended waves of monsters coming to attack the one ancient in the middle. That was the original Dota.
Oh, really?
I played it when Ginsu originally worked on it. And then when Ginsu handed it over to Ice Frog for 6.0, I was actually in Clan TDA, kind of talking with Ice. Like Ice Frog used to like talk in there a little bit, and I used to chat with him in early 6.0, and talking about his ideas with like the characters he was porting over from original Dota to Dota All Stars. Anyway, yeah, I played old school. Like I played everything from Heroes of New Earth, Dota, Heroes of Storm. I played all the MOBAs, man.
Oh, that's fascinating. So that is a big reason why you're into Deadlock. It makes so much sense now.
Oh, hell yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Dude, it has been phenomenal sitting here chatting with you about Path of Exile 2 for the past hour. Any final words on the game? We are literally 5 days away from it.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome. It's going to be a wild ride, but remember, it is early access. I'm just the old man, the voice of temperance here. It is early access. Give your feedback to ZiggyD. Believe in them. We know that they make it good in the end. Do not take Friday off with the expectation that the servers aren't going to be on fire. Just recognize there's probably going to be like a 50, 100, 500,000 queue, and crack a beer, open up our streams, and just chill.
Sub is 100% right. It's going to be a fun day, but only if you expect to have fun sitting in those queues. Everybody in the chat, everybody watching the VOD, make sure you go check out Subtractem on YouTube or Twitch. Links will be in the description below. We'll shout them out right now in the live chat. Thank you all so much for watching. If you haven't subbed already, subscribe to the channel. This is an hour-long video. Hit the like button, and I will see you
Twitch
in
primers,
the next one. Yeah, smash it right now. Thank you so much, Sub. I appreciate it.
Hell yeah. All right, see you. Bye-bye.
All right.